Hey everyone, if we haven't met yet, I'm Emily, one of the co-founders of ATX Television Festival. Thank you for spending time with us this weekend as we celebrate television, but more importantly, the power of story. You're about to see the trailer for I May Destroy You, a brand new HBO show premiering tonight. I am in awe of the creator and star Michaela Coel, and if you're just meeting her for the first time, I'm honored we can be the ones to introduce you. Right after the trailer, Michaela will be joined in conversation with Jeannine from Essence Magazine. So get ready. The show may destroy you, but then it'll build you back up again.
I'm Jeannine, and I'm so excited to welcome Michaela Coel.
Hi!
How are you?
Doing okay, day by day, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be speaking with you. This program it's brilliant. It is, congratulations. This is such an accomplishment. I've watched the entire thing and I just feel so honored to speak with you. And so the first question, just to get right into it, can you tell us a little bit about how you got how you were inspired to create this program and write all 12 episodes of this story? Where did this idea come from?
Yes, well, I guess beginning, I was sexually assaulted in 2016. My drink was spiked whilst I was on a work break having a drink with a friend, and so began a year and 3-month investigation to try and find the perpetrator. And that was the beginning, really. And then as I began to write, I spoke to friends and friends of friends and realized how common sexual assault was, and realized how common women and men would speak about this, often this gray area where their consent was stolen and they weren't quite aware in time. And it was heartbreaking that it was so common, but also what better basis is there for a story, because it felt that everybody or many could identify with what I was going through.
It's interesting. So you're saying there are parts of this that are obviously autobiographical, and so in working through your own trauma and creating something out of it, how did you know when you were ready to write?
Yes, that's interesting. It's a really, really great question. I think in the beginning I wasn't ready to write. So I think my instinct is to write to disassociate myself from something that's quite traumatic, to step outside and look. The first time I remember sort of thinking, there's something in this, is when I was in the police investigation room and my friend, a very dear friend, was looking after me as we waited, and I looked over and noticed he was playing Pokemon Go on his phone while we waited. And I remember thinking, this is so bizarre. This is just absurd. And I knew then, I think I even I jotted it down in my notes, friend plays Pokemon Go whilst blah, 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 blah. So I think it's like something I do, maybe as like a shock, not only to separate myself from an event, but also to get distance to try and understand it. When I initially began pitching the show, I definitely wasn't ready, but didn't know I wasn't ready. But I was so unready that I went to pitch to HBO, and Amy Gravitt, who is the exec there, could kind of see I wasn't ready. So I went back to her a year and a half later, and she was like, you seem ready now. And I was like, yeah, therapy helps. So yeah, I don't know if I began when I was ready. I just began to survive and then slowly kind of found the readiness as I carried on through life.
Looking back, do you know what it was that she saw when she said, I don't know that you're ready?
Yes, I think so. I think there's something about all I could say at that time when I went into the room was what had happened, and then I wanted to do a show about it. So I had no, there was no seed, there was no central message to what I wanted to do other than this happened to me. when I went back, I had more of an idea. I knew how I wanted to end it vaguely. So that was, I kind of knew, I don't know what the 12 episodes will really be, but it's going to end here. And I think I had more of an idea of other people's experiences, and it wasn't just centered around myself.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. One of the things, as you were writing it, so you say it took a year and a half to write, is that?
No, it took 2.5 years or no to write it. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So as I was watching, I was thinking, there are all of these moments when the character, your character Arabella, but also your friends, the Terry and Kwame and all, in fact, everyone in the program, there'd be a moment when someone would do something and it would just, it felt like they just went totally left. And the moment I thought, oh my gosh, what are they doing? The next thought was, of course, because you so brilliantly captured the messiness of life and the way our actions and our thoughts and how we express ourselves do not always coincide. Sometimes there's inconsistencies, and I'm wondering, in terms of your creative process, were you writing and the characters said, you know, I'm going off script here. I'm going left. I'm going in a different direction. Did the characters surprise you, or did you have it all mapped out beforehand? How did those moments come to be?
I think it's a bit of both. I had experiences where I was typing and my jaw was dropping as I was typing, like, okay, this is where we're going. What? And then other times, especially towards the later rounds of drafts, I began to see from a distance, I was able to look at all of these characters and observe how they were operating, and also look at the stages of grief, how we recover. You know, there are sometimes they say there's 5 stages, sometimes they say there's 6, but you begin to, it allowed me to understand what they were doing more, which enabled me to kind of direct them out of the show, you know, bring them to an end, a loop around. So it was a bit of both.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Because I was also thinking, you so fully examine not just the issue of consent and assault and trauma, but also the myriad responses people have. And so often, you know, we just know, like, oh, it's anger or shame or grief or denial. But you went to places that I've never seen captured on film before in terms of how people respond. And I'm wondering, you said you spoke to your friends. Is that primarily how you did your research, or how did you do your background research for this?
Yeah, so a few things. I guess in terms of how the characters responded to trauma, that was definitely probably looking into myself and how I handle trauma, thinking about my friends, but not really asking, because, you know, some of the characters, like Kwame, he's quite a fragile character. And if you press too much, he might break. So I have friends like that, so I didn't ask questions. It was more just observing them. In terms of drug-facilitated sexual assault, for example, I was a fellow at the Wellcome Trust for 2018, which is like the biggest science hub in the UK. And during that year, I could talk to anybody that I wanted in the field of science. So if I wanted to speak to somebody about brain injuries, head injuries, memory loss, drug-facilitated sexual assault, dissociative, sedatives, how does it influence your behavior? What happens? So I got to do that, which was really good. But in terms of how the characters respond, I think I was really looking at, I was doing a lot of introspection. I was looking at who I had become, was becoming, phases in my life where I became a type of way, and looking and for once looking at my behavior and my thoughts and my perception in the context of sexual assault, of trauma, not just sexual assault, of trauma and of confusion, and of fragility, and trying to figure out a narrative as to why we are the way we are.
When you were working on it, though, and bringing it to other people, was there ever a response that surprised you? I mean, it's a tough subject matter.
Yes, definitely. I brought it to a lot of people. You know, I even had my friends just read the scripts and give me their opinion. And I found it really interesting. I think some of the themes, particularly in the final 3 episodes, are very triggering. I think it brings a lot of discomfort, perhaps more triggering than the theme of sexual assault. This theme of Arabella daring to try and understand the darkness, which means looking at her own darkness, checking to see if there is something there that reminds her of her trauma, I think made people really uncomfortable. It made people uncomfortable, and I don't know if I was surprised. I was just interested. I was just interested in the response. From my co-exec producers and my script editor, I got a lot of questions. They were very keen to know, what does this mean? But what are you trying to say? But who's good? Who's bad? Who's good? Who's bad? And, you know, they came to know the point of this is that question is redundant. It's redundant. And that was really interesting. It was really interesting to hear the questions and engage and share all these layered thoughts that were inside of me.
Yeah, I mean, I know that most people haven't seen it yet. So without any spoilers, I will say yes, the ending just takes you on such a journey. There is a point in episode 11 where I actually started cheering. I was so excited. And then we went in a completely different direction. I was like, I'm really savoring that moment, and we went somewhere else. It's fascinating. So, okay, in terms of process, because this is also very interesting to me. You wrote it, you produced it, you're the star, and you also co-directed. Now, I've spoken with many actors, especially when they're working on something that really requires a lot of emotional, takes them to some very difficult places, and they have to be completely subsumed by their character in order to really do that work. How did you balance the demands of acting with all of these other roles that you were playing in terms of production and writing of this series?
Yes, it's quite interesting with my process. I think it's always in me. For me, the characters and the plot lines, when I'm writing them, it's like I'm eating them and they are settling in my stomach, and it can influence me a little bit. So sometimes I seem really high-wired and very energetic, and it's because I'm almost finished a draft of the 12, and so I kind of just need to finish. The writing is where I'm just kind of twisted really the whole time until I'm done. But with the acting, somehow it feels, for me, as cathartic as any other character that I've played. And it's a lot of constantly shifting between deep diving into Arabella and then quickly stepping out because I have to look at everything. And that's from the very beginning. What kind of camera are we going to use? What lens do we want to use? What color scheme do we want the set design to be? What are the characters wearing? Constant collaboration with the heads of departments. And I don't know how well I separate, I don't know who's Michaela and who's Arabella. It's kind of I think everybody sort of took on this project knowing that there was sort of a strange inability to distinguish the two, and Arabella was very able to step out of it and co-direct, and that was me. It's so enmeshed, it's strange.
Well, okay, but Arabella throughout the series, she's different.
Yes.
She's almost like different people. So
Yes.
when you were Arabella in the beginning of the series, and then there's a moment in the middle where she becomes, I mean, just very almost militant in her actions, and then she changes again. Were you directing differently as you were in act? You know, as you like when you would come out of your acting scene and then have to go behind the camera, were you more like the character you were in front of the camera at that time?
I think definitely mentally, yes, but I always knew what I definitely can't do is show that to people. because then you create a very odd environment, and I definitely don't want people to feel like I don't know, like they've got to walk on eggshells and stuff. So the only person I guess that really saw my inner thoughts is my co-director, because I mean, he definitely saw all the shades of me, and we just kept that in private. So we'd be looking at them on it and like, Sam, no, it's not right, we've got to again. And he saw all of that, and then when we present ourselves to our crew, it's always with the energy that produces good energy. The shoot was so long that I couldn't, you know, you have to go in every day. What I did, knowing by the time this is done, I want everybody to have enjoyed the day. I want everybody to have had a day where we just got to work in a productive, positive, collaborative, calm manner, even if inside I didn't feel like that.
When you say collaborative, was everything scripted out, or was there any improv that was happening on set, or what were the was a cast bringing anything to in terms of changing the dialogue or anything?
Maybe on 2 occasions. I remember Kwame, very, you know, really smart. He was just kind of like, that thing that I say at the top of episode 8, do you think when I get to the room, I could maybe like repeat it? I could repeat it. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. But also sometimes the actors would say, like, I imagined that the camera would sort of like start up and come down, and me and Sam would listen and go, do you know what? That's like not a bad idea. We've got time. Let's do it. So it definitely felt like, you know, as Arabella and myself were sort of enmeshed, the job titles weren't very strict in terms of stay in your lane. We didn't have that. Even my producer actually directed for like 2 or 3 days once. Everybody's thoughts are welcome, and also I didn't dictate what the hair and makeup designer did, what the costume designer did. It was always, what do you have first? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? And then collaborating from there, because it empowers everybody. And I did want everybody to feel like they were part of the DNA that makes this baby, which I kept telling everybody. It's our baby, guys.
It's interesting that you say that, because when you talk about it being like your baby, I think that's how mothers often look at their children. They stand there in awe, like, what did I do? This is incredible. That's
yes.
You seem
and the labor, you know, it's like you only have these kind of happy moments full of adrenaline. Like the hard part, the labor of it is kind of whatever, because you have this baby, this like beautiful miracle. So it's okay. It's like, yeah, it was hard, but like, look at what we've got. Look at what we're doing. Look at what we're doing. So.
Okay. So amid all these great feelings, some of what you captured it's harrowing, and you know, I'm sure it was also difficult to shoot and for the actors to be in those moments. And I'm wondering what kind of support you had on set. Like, how did you deal with the subject matter to keep the cast and the crew feeling
Yes.
okay about what they were doing?
Yes. Well, two things. So one, in terms of the cast and the scenes that we had to portray, we had an intimacy director. Her name's Ita O'Brien. And any scene where there is intimacy of any kind, Ita comes and directs. Ita makes sure she clears the room, get the cast who are not in an intimate scene out of here, get the crew out of here, allow these actors to sit in this moment and connect and have confidence to let them know they own this space. We also met up months before we filmed to talk with Ita as well about consent, not only consent in the scripts, but consent to what you're about to do. If there is anything in the scene that you're not comfortable with, and sometimes there were either things that people were wearing that they didn't like, and I just get rid of it. It's just like, let's get rid of it then. You don't want to do this bit here, let's scrap it from the script. We can find another way, because it would have been a nightmare for me to have these actors watch the show and have connotations of moments of discomfort or where they felt disempowered. Aside from that, in terms of the cast and the crew, we had a therapist on retainer the whole time. So she would come on set and meet everybody, give them her card, and they could use Lou. I spoke to Lou on many occasions whenever it was becoming a bit challenging or kind of uncomfortable things were resurfacing. Lou was very great to talk to communicate with.
Is that common on sets to have an intimacy director, you know, and a therapist to help people?
Yes, I think the intimacy director is becoming more common. Mm-hmm. You know, I would not want to be the production that has intimacy scenes and didn't use an intimacy director, because the difference it makes to everything, to well-being, and to what we make is huge. I'm hoping that we move into a time where you can't shoot intimacy scenes without having an intimacy director. I'm not sure if having a therapist on standby is common, and I have to give credit to Phil Clark, my co-exec producer, because he wanted that for me, and I thought, oh well, we should open this up and she should be there for everyone. I don't know how common that is. I have a feeling it might not be very common.
You said that you went to HBO initially and they said maybe you're not quite there yet, and then you circled back. Can you talk a little bit about why you ended up with HBO, and did you decide to go other places first? Like, how did you link up with them in the final result?
Yes, well, after the first time, the Not Ready Michaela, I think that I may have then shot Black Earth Rising, and I had been around to different broadcasters and streaming services, and really was one thing I definitely became quite adamant about was feeling like I had ownership over the product because of the nature of the show, and I was quite conscious of being exploited, and it can be quite tricky. So I stepped away, and because I was shooting Black Earth Rising, I'd met Piers Wenger, who's the commissioner at the BBC, and I had told him that I was looking for somewhere, but was quite concerned about things like rights, ownership, IP, and not wanting to be completely robbed of that. So I went in and pitched to him, and I got the green light that afternoon. I was sent an email saying that I had a green light straight to series. I hadn't written a treatment or a pilot or anything. And so we began there, but obviously the BBC don't have loads of money. So we knew we would have to go to America for some help. And then we met loads of networks in America. And HBO was our final meeting. And at first I just thought Amy looked familiar, and I didn't quite know where I'd met her before. And she said, remember me. And suddenly it just came flooding back to me that I had been in this office pitching the show as a very fragile human being. But what I loved about Amy Gravitt and Amy Hodge was that, they already had, I think they had draft 4 of all 12 of the scripts. And they understood the scripts without me having to explain. They understood the subtext and told me about the meaning of my script. So to hear back exactly what I meant, which is so hard for people to get, I was like, how? This is crazy. You get the innermost layers. And it was like, well, great. And there was no other option for me. I knew I wanted to do it with them. And also Val, my co-exec producers, had worked with them on another show called Sally Forever, and the BBC had worked with them, and the partnership just felt very calm and easy.
What do you want to say to people who are watching this and you're really giving them all their emotions? What do you?
If only I could. It's kind of like me saying, don't worry, don't be afraid, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in terms of where the show goes, but also just like life. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And it's going to be dark. It's going to be dark sometimes, and sometimes it's going to be light, but you'll come out at the end. You will come out at the end. And I have made this show because of the way out. Arabella, Kwame, Terry, I'm mapping how they find their way out, which I think is very, we don't really see a lot of that bit. We end on a cliffhanger and we wonder, oh no, what's going to happen? But I found the way out for these characters. So maybe that will inspire something in your own life, perhaps.
Yeah. That's so very, very true. The way you feel after episode 5 is not how you feel after episode 8 or 9 or 10. You really do. You bring some closure even to the viewer in that way. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for this fantastic experience. I May Destroy You. It's premiering tonight on HBO, and it was such a pleasure to speak with you.
You too, Jeannine.